Revved Up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Very good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. The Home Secretary's condemned anti-Semitic behaviour during the Armistice Day demonstration in London. Hundreds of thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters marched peacefully through the capital yesterday, but the Met Police says it's actively investigating a number of possible cases of hate crime. Suella Braverman described some chants and placards as sick, inflammatory and clearly criminal, and she's called for further action. She's also praised officers for their handling of the disorder after right-wing counter-protesters who were trying to confront the rally clashed with police. The force, which arrested 145 people yesterday, have confirmed 7 have been charged with various offences. British Transport Police is also investigating a racially aggravated altercation at London Waterloo and released photos of 4 men it's trying to identify. Authorities also want to speak to a woman over an alleged anti-Semitic hate crime at Victoria Station. Meanwhile, the Home Secretary, who attended today's Remembrance service, is being blamed for stoking tensions ahead of the pro-Palestinian protests. During the week, Suella Braverman described the demonstrations as hate marches and questioned the integrity of the police for allowing yesterday's rally to go ahead. The Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf is among the growing chorus of voices calling for her to go.
I'm afraid that the Home Secretary's position, in my view, is untenable. She should, in fact, not even be allowed to resign. She should just be sacked by the Prime Minister, because no Home Secretary should be fanning the flames of division. Quite the opposite.
However, the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps has defended his Cabinet colleague.
The job as Home Secretary is to make sure that, quite properly, that the powers exist and then the powers are then used within the operational independence of the police to make sure that marches and protests are properly policed, and where the laws have been broken, as they clearly have been in some cases, that those prosecutions take place. That is what a Home Secretary is there for. Now, I wouldn't have quite put it in her language. It's not the language I would have used, but the point still stands.
The Kings led the nation, observing a 2-minute silence on Remembrance Day, honouring fallen soldiers. Well, the Prince of Wales was among the senior royals to stand behind King Charles, with the monarch wearing the uniform of the Marshal of the Royal Air Force. He then laid a wreath similar to the one produced for King George VI. The Prime Minister and Labour leader were also at the Cenotaph in central London and were joined by other senior politicians and dignitaries. Hamas says it's suspending hostage negotiations because Israel is targeting a major hospital. Well, the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City has come under intense fire as Israeli forces close in on the site. Israel says Hamas is using the facility as cover for a command centre which the terrorist group denies. Meanwhile, Palestinian health officials say 13 people have been killed in an airstrike on a house in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. Weather warnings have been issued for Northern Ireland, England and parts of Wales as Storm Debbie approaches. It's the fourth storm of the season. Heavy rain and gale-force winds of up to 80 miles an hour are expected. Earlier this month, Storm Ciarán caused widespread flooding. Yellow alerts will be in place from 3 a.m. tomorrow morning until 6 o'clock in the evening. Iceland's preparing for a volcanic eruption in the southwest of the country. The island has been hit by a series of earthquakes over the last few days. Authorities say there's evidence of underground magma spreading rapidly. Around 3,000 residents have been evacuated from the town of Grindavik, and one of Iceland's most popular attractions, the Blue Lagoon Spa, has also been forced to close. The Prime Minister has marked the start of Diwali, the Hindu festival of light. Rishi Sunak was joined by his wife and 2 daughters, lighting candles at Downing Street. The family placed them around the steps of number 10 for the start of the 5-day celebration. Now, it's believed the placement of lamps and candles outside homes protects against spiritual darkness and brings good luck. And on that note, we say goodbye. This is GB News. We're on TV, on digital radio and on your smart speaker too. And now it's time for the Camilla Tominey Show.
Good morning and welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show. We've got a special programme for you this morning to mark Remembrance Sunday. Let me bring in my 2 very special guests. We've got a special panel for Remembrance Sunday. Michael Portillo, former Defence Secretary, and Nick Owen, formerly of the BBC and ITN. You're hearing the sounds at the Cenotaph there. We're watching images of the Cenotaph. We're about 3 minutes out from the procession leaving the front door of the Foreign Office building. That's going to be led by the cross-bearer. We are going to be seeing, of course, the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, the SNP Westminster Group Leader Stephen Flynn, Leader of the Liberal Democrats. We're also going to be seeing DUP Leader Geoffrey Donaldson. We're going to be seeing, of course, as well, former Prime Ministers. So John Major is going to be joined by Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson and, albeit briefly, Liz Truss and others. I mean, it's an interesting sort of image of, I think, public life, this, Nicholas, because we're obviously seeing people in official positions. We talk about members of the royal family and indeed politicians being public servants, but we're also seeing, once again, this military spectacle of people gathering to remember. And these are people who are giving their lives and their times to king and country.
Absolutely. I mean, look at all those, all the military people, all those soldiers there. As Michael was saying, you know, the wars that have been fought since, who knows what we might be calling upon them to do in the future. And so you're quite right. The other thing, you don't very often get the institution of monarchy and the institution of politicians sort of coming together in this way, something that we're all agreed upon.
I'm just going to just give some description of what's happening just there at the entrance to the Foreign Office. Those younger people there who are lining and are basically producing a guard of honour there for the VIPs that are just about to come out are the King's Scouts. They perform a traditional role. My understanding is the Scouts in general have a huge presence here today, and those who are the King's Scouts are the ones who have done the most service in the Scouts, and they get a special award because they're so dedicated to the cause. So that's why they're there now. It's we're about 30 seconds off, we believe, from the procession leaving that front door. As we can see there, people just gathering, waiting. A bit of nerves in the background, I'd imagine, Michael, as people just get in line and make sure they're in the right place.
The music, of course, provides some of the cues. I think we're hearing Elgar's Nimrod.
Yes.
The music is becoming more and more sombre as we approach the moment when the 2-minute silence will begin. And so everyone inside the building is, as it were, called to order by the strains of the music that they're hearing playing from Whitehall.
And just to recap as well, the service today, the service of Remembrance, is going to be conducted by the Dean of the Chapels Royal, that's Bishop Sarah Mullally. She was appointed Bishop of London in 2018. She became a Privy Councillor and took her seat in the House of Lords in 2018. She's got a really interesting history, Dame Sarah. And here we see the cross-bearer leading the procession now. We can see the King's choristers there, who are from the City of London School. These are the same choristers that sang at the coronation, and we see the clergy there leading the procession out of the door of the Foreign Office.
After the 2-minute silence, there will, of course, be a brief service of remembrance led by the Bishop of London.
If you're just tuning in, this is a GB News Remembrance Sunday special. We are seeing live images now from the Foreign Office door as this solemn procession begins to enter the area at the Cenotaph. We're about to see members of the royal family and indeed key politicians and party leaders assemble for this ceremony. I was just saying Dame Sarah has this extraordinary background because she used to be the chief nurse of the NHS, so she went from nursing to being ordained, and she will be carrying out today's service.
We're now listening to Purcell's As I Was Laid. I think one of the most sad pieces of music that's conceivable, the end of his Dido and Aeneas.
Thankfully, it looks as though rain has held off. Earlier on, we saw umbrellas. Don't see any there now.
Yeah, so we've just seen the Lord Bishop of London, as I say, and the Chapel Royal Choir, the General Officer commanding London District and his staff leaving the Foreign Office. They're going to take their places in the north-east of the Cenotaph, and then momentarily, just in seconds, we're going to see the procession led by the Prime Minister leaving the Foreign Office onto Whitehall.
The refrain of the music is "Remember Me," which is, of course, what the day is about.
And here, of course, we see Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, accompanied by Keir Starmer, the Labour leader. This isn't a day for party politics. This is a day for politicians to come together. Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, behind him with Stephen Flynn, who's the Scottish National Party Westminster Group leader.
Very smart, if I may say so. They've learnt their positions and they've come to order in an almost military fashion.
We can also see there Geoffrey Donaldson, the leader of the DUP. He's joined. Next to him there is the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle. We can also see Lord McFall, who is the Lord Speaker. Next to him is James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary. And next to James Cleverly is a woman who has courted some controversy this week, Home Secretary Suella Braverman. In the second row there, we can see our former Prime Minister. There's Boris Johnson, as distinctive as ever. He's joined by Sir John Major. Sir Tony Blair is also there. The Right Honourable Gordon Brown, he's alongside David Cameron. We just saw Theresa May, she's on the second row next to Boris Johnson. Liz Truss also there, despite her brief moment in office. And then behind them we're going to be seeing key members of the Cabinet. We're going to be seeing the Secretary of State for Defence, Grant Shapps, and others.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Vautry here, your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Many of us will be waking up to a very unsettled start to the new working week, and that is due to Storm Debbie. This area of low pressure that is very quickly going to deepen overnight and into tomorrow, producing some very strong winds, particularly directly on the southern flank of that for northern areas of England, coastal areas of the Irish Sea. Throughout this evening, we do have one band of rain sweeping its way across Scotland, but it's this rain in the southwest that is associated with Storm Debbie. Some very heavy pulses for England, Wales and into Northern Ireland, where it could be very persistent. Some localised flooding is possible during the early hours of Monday morning. Temperatures around 7 to 9 degrees Celsius for most of us, but some patchy frost is possible across the very far north of Scotland. But a very disruptive morning rush hour period for a lot of us. Some very strong winds, severe gales up to 80 miles per hour along coastal areas of the Irish Sea. Very blustery over the Pennines and northern areas of England as well. The rain sweeps its way up into eastern areas of Scotland, where again it could be heavy and produce some localised flooding in places. Some brighter spells for southern areas of England, Wales and into Northern Ireland later on in the afternoon, but it is still going to be a very windy day here nonetheless. Temperatures between 9 and 15 degrees Celsius. Tuesday looks less disruptive than Monday, but it is still going to be on the unsettled side with a mixture of showers in there, some of those heavy with thunderstorms and hail as well. A lot of cloud for northern England into Scotland, but Northern Ireland, southern areas of England and Wales may see some sunshine in between some of those showers as well. Remaining unsettled into the second half of the week as well with further wet and windy weather. Bye-bye.
Earlier on GB News Radio.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Less than a minute now to the 2-minute silence as the King and fellow members of the royal family arrive at the Cenotaph. We're just seeing the King now, His Majesty the King, laying his wreath at the Cenotaph, following the last post being sounded by the buglers of the Royal Marines. This is the Queen's equerry, Oliver Plunkett, who's laying a wreath on her behalf. The Prince of Wales now laying his wreath. Next to lay a wreath is the Duke of Edinburgh, formerly known as Prince Edward, the Earl of Wessex. The Princess Royal now laying her wreath. She and her husband, Admiral Sir Tim Lawrence, will be meeting with veterans after this Cenotaph service. And this is the equerry of the Duke of Kent laying a wreath on his behalf. We can see His Majesty the King there in his Royal Air Force uniform. The royals lay their wreaths first, and then they will be followed by the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak leading the commemorations. Minister Rishi Sunak now laying his wreath. The leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, now approaching the Cenotaph to lay his wreath. This is Stephen Flynn, MP. He's laying a wreath on behalf of both the SNP and Plaid Cymru parliamentary group. The leader of the Liberal Democrat Party is the next to solemnly to the Cenotaph and lay his wreath. Doogie Beattie in Enniskillen. And this is the Right Honourable Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party and the leader of the DUP in the UK House of Commons, laying his wreath. The Speaker of the House of Commons, laying his wreath. He's representing there the staff of the House of Commons. And we're shortly followed by his Lord's, House of Lords counterpart, Lord Macfall. Speaker. He's laying his wreath on behalf of Parliament, representing members of the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Person to lay a wreath, or the next people to lay a wreath, are James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary. He's accompanied by Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary. They're laying their wreaths together on behalf of the intelligence agencies.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Fed up of being patronised and bored to death by other afternoon news shows? Me too. So I thought, if you want a job done properly, do it yourself. News as it breaks on TV, radio and online. All the big debates and the best guests on the topics that you actually care about. Whether you're having discussions with your mates down the pub, in your van to and from work, or around the dinner table with your family, that's the kind of stuff that this show is all about. Join me, Patrick Christie, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
At this point, now that the politicians have laid their wreaths, we're going to see representatives from the Crown dependencies and the United Kingdom overseas territories. They're going to lay their wreaths in one group, followed by 47 High Commissioners or their representatives, who will lay wreaths in 5 groups. They will place their wreaths in turn on the bottom steps of the west side, then the top and bottom steps of the south side, and finally on the top step of the east side of the Cenotaph. Nick, what are you...
I was very struck. Rishi Sunak, our Prime Minister, came forward. He's a Hindu, very proud Hindu. And it made me think, and we should all recall that we're not just talking about people from this country who serve and have perished in wars that we've seen, but so many people from across the India, Pakistan, those countries, South Africa, Australia. Enormous contributions.
Yeah, with that in mind, after these representatives from the Crown dependencies and the overseas territories have laid their wreaths, it's always significant, isn't it, Michael, that as well as the Ambassador of Ireland, the Ambassador of Nepal lay their wreaths, and of course, as well as representing their own areas, it's the Gurkhas when it comes to the Ambassador of Nepal and the contribution over the years that the Gurkhas have made to the war effort.
Yes, it's tricky to name Commonwealth countries because the contribution was, I think, from all of them, and it's a very large number of countries. We mustn't forget the contribution, for example, from the Caribbean, from Canada, and so on. I was very struck earlier hearing from Enniskillen that the Taoiseach of Ireland is in attendance at the act of remembrance there. Of course, in the First World War, we were still the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, and many Irishmen died fighting for the British Empire. And then many of them were not much remembered in subsequent decades. And there's been something of a turning back on that so that the Irish do remember those who fell for the British Empire during the First World War.
You're listening and watching GB News with me, Camilla Tominey. I'm joined in the studio by Nick Owen and Michael Portillo as we take in these extremely moving scenes from the Cenotaph in London. At the moment, the images that you're watching are of representatives from 47 different Commonwealth countries. We've got 47 High Commissioners, all their representatives laying wreaths in 5 groups at the moment at various sides of the Cenotaph monument. Very solemn scenes, and I think, again, seeing the royals, the contribution of the royals to the military. We know how important it was to the late Queen. Nick, the King there, you said to me earlier about how emotional he seemed last night at the Royal Festival of Remembrance at the Royal Albert Hall. Tell me about that.
Well, he was... I don't think tearful was quite the expression I would use from the pictures I've seen, but moved, of course, yes, emotional about it because, well, he saw there his parents, a reminder of all the things that they did and all the military that his father was very, very much involved in as well, and a Queen showed her devotion to the armed services on so many occasions. All these events sort of coming together on this weekend, aren't they? I'd like to, if I may, just say to Michael, you in the studio, you've actually been there, you've laid a wreath, Michael. It must be an extraordinary moment to look back on, and your feelings at the time, wanting to get it right, of course. There's a lot of ceremony involved, but also your own personal feelings stirred up about your own family and so on.
My father, of course, was in the Spanish Civil War. So one side had a very particular experience of war. When I was Defence Secretary, of course, we were losing British soldiers. British soldiers were still being lost in Northern Ireland. And some were lost in the operation in the former Yugoslavia, not frequently to enemy fire, but very often to things like road traffic accidents and air accidents and so on. And so one was aware of the continuing sacrifice. As Nick said before, a serviceman and woman simply does not know what he or she is going to be called upon to do next. And it is whatever the government decides. And sometimes those operations are very controversial, and whether they are or whether they are not, the servicemen and women go willingly and they do their best. And then I think it is our duty, however controversial the operation may have been, to give the same respect and remembrance to those who laid down their lives, putting aside the controversy that may have accompanied the operation in the first place.
We've just seen representatives, or indeed the ambassadors of Ireland and the ambassador of Nepal, lay their wreaths after those laying wreaths on behalf of 47 High Commissioners. We're also going to be seeing the representatives of the Merchant Navy and Fishing Fleets, the Air Transport Auxiliary Association, and the National Police Chiefs Council Chair on behalf of the civilian services.
Is it worth saying a word about the Gurkhas, just in case some people don't know? At the time of the independence of India and the partition of India and Pakistan, there was debate as to what would happen to the Gurkhas, and some went to Pakistan, some went to India, and some remained with Britain. And they have continued to be a part of the British Army ever since. And the competition amongst that population in Nepal to enter the Gurkhas is fierce. They are desperately keen to enter, and they have to achieve extraordinary levels of fitness in order to qualify and to serve with the British Army.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels
we're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, after all of the wreaths have been laid, there's going to be a short service conducted by the Lord Bishop of London. That, as I've mentioned, is Dame Sarah Mullally, formerly a nurse, a chief nurse with the NHS. She is going to be carrying out that service. Afterwards, trumpeters of the Royal Air Force will sound rouse, and then there will be the singing of the first verse of the national anthem to complete that ceremony. So we're just waiting for that to begin now.
Fortitude, that forgetting all selfish and unworthy motives, we may live to thy glory and to the service of mankind, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Teach us, good Lord, to serve thee as thou deservest, to give and not to count the cost, to fight and not to heed the wounds, to toil and not to speak for rest, to labour and not to ask for any award, save that of knowing that we do thy will. Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Our Father, which art in heaven, our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Unto God's gracious mercy and protection we commit you. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace this day and always. Amen.
So His Majesty the King there is leaving with members of the royal family, with the exception of the Princess Royal and her husband Vice Admiral Sir Tim Lawrence, and also their equerry Commander Anne Sullivan. They will take their place alongside the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps to Horse Guards, where the Princess Royal is expected to take the salute of the march past of ex-service and civilian organisations. The King there looking in suitably solemn mood for the Cenotaph ceremony conducted by the Dean of the Chapels Royal, also known as the Lord Bishop of London, the Right Reverend and the Right Honourable Dame Sarah Mullally. He was there in his RAF uniform, accompanied by his son, Prince William, the Prince of Wales, wearing his Blues and Royals Army uniform. We've come to the conclusion of the official ceremony now. What will happen next is that the participants will return to the Foreign Office building, and a signal will be given to the representative of the Royal British Legion, the Royal Navy Association, the Army Benevolent Fund and the Royal Air Forces Association, as well as the Royal Commonwealth Ex-Services League, Transport for London and the Royal British Legion Scotland to move forward now and lay their wreaths on the east side of the Cenotaph. Let's briefly bring in Nick and Michael. Michael, just reflect on what we've just seen over the course of a very moving and touching 30 minutes.
It's always the same. It's always immensely dignified, and yet somehow today I heard the silence more than I'd ever heard it before. When Big Ben was striking 11, the striking of that bell somehow emphasises the silence behind. And what some people were saying yesterday, Liz McConaughey was saying it earlier, our Chinook force person, our veteran, she was saying that yesterday The noise, and I think she meant it most literally and figuratively, the noise had blocked out the act of remembrance, that there wasn't the moment yesterday when everyone was talking about demonstrations to think about what it's really about, which is the loss of life and the sacrifice. And today, perhaps, we've made up for that in London and in cities across the United Kingdom, because the silence has been absolute. And in that silence, people have been able to be alone with their thoughts and recall those who made that sacrifice for us.
Nicholas, Michael's right, isn't he? I mean, actually, we had that headline. We started this show with dignity and dishonour from yesterday and those scenes. Today has been a picture of dignity in the Cenotaph in Whitehall, quite rightly, to remember those we've lost.
Indeed, I echo completely what Michael says. Absolute silence. Our thoughts with all those who've gone before, serving military today and might be called upon to do anything in the future. And also, I think there's a poignancy as well in that we are still a world where there is war. There is Ukraine, which is almost being overlooked at the moment. The fighting goes on, unfortunately. Well, there's no end to it. But we call upon young people, mostly, as I said earlier on, to go away and do the bidding of all of us. We put the politicians in to make the decisions, and the politicians send people off. And today we remembered them, and with pride and with some poignancy, as I say.
Well, that's all from me today on the Camilla Tominey Show. We've been very honoured to bring you the Remembrance Sunday special here at GB News. Thank you so much to Nicholas Owen and to Michael Portillo.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News. Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Time tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need.